Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today I will be interviewing Chris Nash. You may remember him, he played the handsome rebel in Mischief. He also was in Satisfaction, the rock movie with Justine Bateman and Julia Roberts. And he also did many guest shot appearances on horror and sci-fi anthology shows like Amazing Stories and Freddy's Nightmares. I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that work and talk about his music career. He's gotten into music in recent years. I don't know how long he's been into music for, but I'm going to find out about all that stuff today, and I'm pretty fucking excited. He's my third interview from Mischief. Mischief, you know, as you all know, is one of my favorite teen comedy movies, and I'm so blessed. So, here is my interview with Chris Nash. Hi, Chris.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. This is such an honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Awesome. So, going back to the beginning, was acting something that was on your radar early on?
Not at all. No, I was always a musician. I met John Hammond Sr. When I was 14 years old, and he wanted me to stay in New York as a musician. John Hammond Sr. discovered Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday,
right?
Robert Johnson. I mean, he was an old guy when I met him. And his son, John Hammond Jr., is a huge. He helped discover, many people. He's a blues guy. Stevie Ray Vaughan, George Thorogood. I mean, and he's an amazing player himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up instead of hanging there in New York, I ended up going to I hitchhiked out to California with my guitar and a knapsack and lived on the beach in Venice Beach for almost a year.
Huh. Wow, that's funny because yesterday I interviewed a Bay Area musician I've known for years, and she used to open for John Hammond Jr.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. Actually, he's coming down to play at McCabe's, which is a music store. It's a very old, famous music store in Santa Monica, California. That's where I live. And I'm going to go see him in May.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's great.
Yeah.
He has his guitar and he plays slide, and he's kind of kept the blues alive.
Very underrated, I think.
Oh yeah, but most of these guys are.
Mm-hmm. So you got out to L.A. and did you take acting lessons out there?
Well, yeah, actually, what happened was I was playing in Westwood. Westwood is where UCLA is. And, I met Chicago, the band Chicago. I met some of the guys from the Doobie Brothers. And, you name it. Everybody went through there. They would go watch movies, hang out in Westwood. It was kind of a cool little place. And we would play on the street. We had like a little band that would play like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Chicago, the Doobie Brothers. We'd play like all these songs,
mm-hmm.
Blues songs, and we'd have like 3-part harmonies, 4-part harmonies. And we got really good. So there were a lot of people that really wanted to help us. One of the guys that came by was a guy named Mickey Rourke. Mickey, nobody knew who Mickey was. Mickey was just some young actor who was, just kind of trying to make it himself. And Mickey and I, over time, they'd come out and they'd kind of watch us play, and it'd be like, are you, do you act? And I'm like, no, what are you, a manager or something? And then, we kind of over time became friends, and he had a little acting class that he would do for younger actors, and some of the actors that would go would be like Diane Lane, a guy, Sean Penn, Chris Penn, Matt Dillon would show up every once in a while, Nick Cage, who was Nick Coppola back at that time.
Yeah.
And, so I kind of went because Diane Lane was, like, really cute. I just basically stared at her for an hour. And, but I did pick up some techniques. And then, I had some interest from EMI and Geffen Records and, some others, A&M Records. And I cut, a first right of refusal deal with EMI. Mm-hmm. And, Neil Sean came and played guitar on it from Journey, and David Platchon, who now plays, he was a drummer. He was playing with Peter Frampton, and now he plays with the Motels, phenomenal drummer. And Tony Berg was the producer. And, so, I was doing that simultaneously as people were, suggesting that I get into acting as well. Because I had the look, whatever that is. You had the look. It's like, yeah, all right, okay. And I never really wanted to be an actor. And it was only really through, I was over at Lorimar, and Lorimar used to do television shows like Dallas, Knots Landing, and tons of other things. But I had a publishing deal. I was writing songs with them for a couple different acts and some of the TV shows, and some guys came running in and say, hey, do you act? And I said, yeah, I'm studying with this guy, Mickey Rourke. And they're like, oh my God, we love Mickey. And because Mickey had done Body Heat, and he was just getting ready to do Diner, or he might have just done Diner. But anyway, Bill Bixby directed it, and I got it. And Robert Romanus, who was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, was one of the actors, and it was a TV series, and we only did the pilot and never got picked up. But that was my first thing ever. And, they paid me, they actually paid me cash. It was amazing to me, the amount of money that you can make acting. Basically, you just kind of doing your thing, You kind of in your character, and you're doing this, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, acting was very lucrative back then.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I really, I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it was definitely a lot less work to me at that time than writing and producing and trying to get, people to play on your record and, that whole sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was, it was great. I mean, because, I did have, a group of people that supported me. I had a lot of actor friends that, if I had questions or, if I needed help, just even, studying for my auditions, they would come out and help me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good that you had support.
Yeah, and they were working as well, yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. It was a very tight-knit community back then in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, I think it still is to some degree. I think, especially among young actors, because and the same with music as well. I mean, it's like if you get in with a good group of people, people that aren't just looking out for themselves, but they're looking out for the entire community. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's mostly, what I do now with my music. We have a group of people that really looks to help people actually, when I came out to Los Angeles, I came out to Los Angeles because it was like, the Stones were playing on the Beatles thing with Eric Clapton, with Jimi Hendrix, with, like all these different people, and they were all playing on everybody's record, and it was like the coolest thing to me. And I thought, wow, what a way to live, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was similar, it was a similar community, and I thought, wow, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Then you did a powerhouse debut film in Mischief. I was 4 years old watching this movie when my parents were asleep.
Great.
I had a huge crush on Kathy Stewart, and this is where I first saw her. I was hoping she was going to have a nude scene in the movie, but Kelly Preston ended up being the first naked girl I ever saw.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But how did you get so lucky in being cast as Jean?
Well, originally there was a female director, Lyndall Hobbs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Lyndall, she's an Australian woman and really a powerhouse lady. She has a couple kids with Al Pacino, and she's a director in her own right, and she originally was brought me in for Mischief, and she wanted to change the script and make it more musical, where Gene was actually a musician, like an Elvis type character.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted to shoot it in Florida. Well, that didn't work out. But I was the front runner when she was the director. At least, I was one of the front runners.
Mm-hmm.
And so she really wanted to focus on my music background. And then she, I guess, decided to leave the project, but I was still kind of up for it. And then they brought in Mel Damsky. Now, by that time, I had met John, who was the producer, and he kind of kept me around because we had sort of connected, and it was kind of a cool thing. And so he kind of kept me up for the part. So this went on for about a year and a half, and I had no clue that this film was ever going to be made. I was just like, well, that was fun. That was kind of cool. I might have starred in the thing, and then I started getting calls back, and they called my agent. And they said, well, we're still interested in Chris, but we've got a new director, and so then I had to audition for the part. And then finally, because, I'd never been in anything, other than a few TV shows, I'd been in Family Ties.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, I had to do a screen test, and the screen test was with Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
He and I, because he was up for it. And Michael J. Fox and I did the actual screen test on 20th Century Fox on the lot. It was a blast. And Michael and I were kind of friendly. I mean, we were supposed to do a film together, but my agent screwed that up at the time. And because they really wanted me to do television.
Yeah.
Which is where I started, which was a little confusing for me. But Mike and I kind of hung out, and it was really great because he's hysterical, and it was fun to do, and I felt comfortable, and it was a great experience. So I ended up getting the part.
Wow, it sounds like you went through a more frustrating process than Doug and Kathy did.
Well, Doug had done on Golden Pond. Doug was like, he was a well-known young actor. And Kathy, too. I mean, Kathy did Starfighter, and she'd done,
Night of the Comet.
The Comet, yeah, right. And so they sort of had, they had a background. I really didn't.
Mm-hmm. Did you try to draw from James Dean or Marlon Brando for the role?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, those were my, those are my starting points. I mean, I love the East of Eden, Rebels Out of Claws, Giant, and, I liked a lot of those old movies. I thought they were kind of cool, I mean, and that was really the only, and the music too. I mean, some of the great old music, because like I said, I mean, John Hammond introduced me to Big Joe Turner. And I would go to jazz clubs or blues clubs in New York City when I'm 14 years old, as a guest of John Hammond Sr. He would send me there. I mean, he would actually bring me there, but I would go there with my buddy whose grandmother was like best friends with John Hammond, who actually introduced me to Mr. Hammond. And so, I was a huge fan of that music and of that, I mean, how there's a scene in Mischief where I'm saying, this better version of that when we're at the jukebox. Ain't that a shame or something? I think it was.
Yeah.
And that's true. I mean, that really was my, that's where I drew a lot of my energy from, was through the music. And I think, the idea of the character was that he was, from a different place. He was from Chicago, and he was exposed to like real music or the, the cooler side, the chess record side, as opposed to, the white sort of, I can't say dumbed down version, but the sex down version,
Yeah.
It wasn't so sexy and it wasn't so grindy. It was nicer, the homogenized version, I guess.
R&B, yeah.
Yeah. So we're they only showed Elvis from the waist up, and
Your chemistry with Doug is, to me, one of the best ever in movie history, and you and Kathy are so great together. I mean, this was just miraculous casting.
Well, and the other benefit that, and yeah, it was Marcy Liroff was the casting director, and she was awesome. And I think Kelly as well was excellent, and and Rosalie was like one of my favorite characters. And it was played incredibly well. I mean, it's like the other thing is we were in Nelsonville, Ohio.
Yeah.
Okay? There's nothing going on in Nelsonville, Ohio, especially back in the 80s. Okay, so, when I got there, we got there, and we're staying at this little tiny hotel, and people are lovely. I mean, I still have friends there. I go back, and I have friends in Nelsonville, Ohio.
Nice.
But, at that time, there was, like, nothing going on. It's like, well, what do you want to do at night? Well, you go to Pizza Crossing. I said, what's that? And it's a pizza place. And you go out and you hang out and you have Coke and pizza. I'm like, oh, okay. This was, and this was in the script. So, Doug, Kathy, Kelly, and the rest of the cast were there we were, So we became friends very quickly because we're in, we could have been in the Middle East somewhere in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we had to rely on each other for entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they both have told me about that and stuff, about how much you guys had such a good time making the movie. I've always loved that fight scene with you and DW at the sock hop, because that's an epic brawl for two teenagers in the 50s. Was that really difficult to choreograph?
Yeah, I mean, DW's like, he's in pretty good shape. I mean, he was, and I've worked out with Frank, Jim Gisondo was the main guy I worked out with, Franco Colombo, and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, to do that part, they wanted to beef me up. And, I was skinny and I smoked cigarettes and, I mean, I wasn't in bad shape, but DW was actually in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we did fight, we were about the same weight, and both of us got a little banged up. I mean, we did, we did have stuntmen, but, to make it look real, you kind of have to do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
To some degree. I mean, they obviously, you want to keep the actors safe, and you don't want them to get, a broken arm or punched in the face, or, so it was pretty well choreographed, and there were some really good technical stuntmen. They were phenomenal.
Yeah, because I look at it and go, there's no way they didn't walk away without bruises.
Oh, yeah, I had bruises. I mean, I really did. I mean, we had my main stunt guy was Chuck Waters. He did the motorcycle stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I rolled off the motorcycle, and so I'd get a little beat up. But, I mean, they were great. I mean, they were awesome.
Mm-hmm. Terry Quinn played your dad. He was only like 10 years older than you or something, right?
Yeah, I know, and he kept complaining about that. He's like, I'm not that much older than you. And I was like, yeah, okay, Dad.
Where do you think Gene and Bunny ended up?
I think they actually ended up in Kentucky and built a farm and became, they probably raised a bunch of horses, and, I think they were successful together.
Mm-hmm. I think so, too. I also think that Gene may have been killed in an auto race like so many of those guys at that time did, or maybe even get drafted in Nam,
That could have been a possibility, too. I mean, some people have suggested that we do like a sequel.
No, it's perfect on its own. Do you still?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I mean, people do, say, well, what happened? What happened to Jamie Gertz? What happened to Rosalie? Where did she go? What happened to DW? Kenny?
Yeah, people do that.
And Doug and Kelly. I mean, what happened to all of them?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's like, when you do a movie and you're like, yeah, it's over. I mean, I'm still friends with the cast. I'm still friends with, I'll see people from that time to time. I still see Doug and Kathy. I think we're getting together actually soon.
Nice.
For dinner. And but I do keep in touch with some of them, and I'll run into some of them every once in a while. But the funny thing is a lot of the fans of Mischief, and some of the fans are like family and cousins and friends, and then you meet a random fan. They're like, wow, that you guys. I always wondered what happened to like Kathy, in the movie. Do you have any idea? Like, or Kelly. I mean, and I'll be like, I don't know. Maybe she married the football player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like people's mind, I think, naturally want to find out. If they do really enjoy a movie, if they really are, fans.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about it too. Do you still get recognized for the role like that often?
Occasionally, I'll get recognized by people. But, you know, I have a beard. I got a full beard now and a long hair. And, you know, it's funny because even back then when I looked like I looked in the movie, people wouldn't recognize me. Or if, you know, I did a movie, you know, I did one with Satisfaction with the, I don't know, you know, people would look at me and they'd be like, you look familiar, but they wouldn't recognize me in themselves, you know?
Yeah.
Julie Roberts. I'm Julie Roberts' boyfriend in Satisfaction.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
You know, they'll be like, what part did you play? I'm like, Julie's boyfriend. They're like, oh, yeah, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I recognize you now, but you know, I don't think I looked all that different. But, you know, I would do different parts, and, you know, I played a lot of rapists and killers and bad guys, too, you know, so tried to, I tried to look a little bit different in different parts, and, you know, I do different accents and all sorts of different things.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I really got into my parts, I guess. I don't know.
You were on the pilot of the short-lived Red Fox show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing stand-up comedy on and off for 13 years, and I have not met anyone who worked with Red Fox. What was he like?
Well, I actually worked on a few of those shows, and I liked Red a lot. You know, he was definitely he wasn't easy to work with.
Yeah.
You know, because he was such a perfectionist when it came to comedy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were working with ABC, and I was working with Stu Shesler, actually brought me in. He was one of the producers on that show. And how about that for names? I'm just coming out of nowhere. It's amazing I can remember anything. But, yeah, Stu asked me to be on the show because I'd done, actually, he was one of the producers on Best Times, which was the one with Robert Romanus, the first thing that I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, why don't you come on in and audition for it? So I auditioned for it. I met Red. He seemed to like me enough. And, you know, I think the thing that impressed Red was that, you know, I wasn't some hunky kid that, you know, was, you know, I really treated him with respect, you know, as a person. And I think once that was established, and he kind of took to me a little bit. But the problem with that show was kind of Red wanted to take over, and he really had his own ideas for that show, and the producers had other ideas. But as far as a person, he was a very nice guy, you know. But that was a difficult situation because, you know, it was there are two different energies coming in. It was Red and the producers, and they didn't always agree on a lot of stuff. And the show was very short-lived because of that. I think it could have been something really, really good if it was allowed to gel, you know?
Yeah. Kind of like, you know, the way Seinfeld did in that show's early years. And
I agree. Yeah, I mean, that was a great show. And Howard, it was Shapiro West. You know, George Shapiro, Howard West. They managed me for a little bit. And so I got to go to a lot of those parties, and I got to meet the cast and the crew, and yeah, it was a lot to develop. I think, you know, because George and Howard were the executive producers of that show. They also dealt with a lot of those guys on a personal level, and I think so. They were given a lot of leeway.
Mm-hmm. And Pamela Adlon was on there.
Who?
Pamela Adlon, back when she was Pamela Siegel.
Yep.
Yeah, she's a talented lady.
great show. That was one of the greatest shows. I mean, I'll still watch. I'll get a clip on Facebook or something, and I'll just laugh my ass off. It's just hysterical.
Then you did the Wraith.
Yep.
This was pre-fame Charlie Sheen. It's a very interesting premise about a demonic car, which is ironic because his brother Emilio did Maximum Overdrive in the same year.
Yeah, Emilio was a friend of mine. I met Emilio through Nick Coppola or Nick Cage.
Mm-hmm.
And Emilio and I actually were, I was close to doing Breakfast Club.
Oh.
He really wanted me to do Breakfast Club. And I ended up not doing it. And but Emilio and I were up for a lot of different things. Breakfast Club, and then we were up for this Army movie. I forget the name of the Army movie, but he was excellent in it. And I was friendly with Emilio, and I really liked Emilio. Mm-hmm. He was just one of the nicest people I'd ever met in Hollywood. And here he was, his dad was this big star, and I couldn't, it's like one of those things where you're like pleasantly surprised. And I liked them all. I liked all the, Estevez's and Sheens, mm-hmm. all very, very nice people. And so when I met Charlie, it was like I knew everybody in the family, and I just thought, wow, this is going to be great, Mm-hmm. And Charlie was cool. Charlie was a lot of fun to hang out. He's like one of the brightest comedic minds, and he was just funny. I mean, he was funny and great to hang out with, Mm-hmm. And, unfortunately, Charlie is a brilliant guy. And unfortunately, with a lot of brilliance comes tragedy.
Right.
Because, your brain, you got to shut your brain off. And the only way to do that a lot is, try and, do drugs or women or whatever, your drug of choices,
Yeah.
Fame's tough. It's tough. I was at Spago one night, and I used to go to Spago all the time because my manager would have us go there, and it was kind of place to be seen. And I was nobody really. This was just about the time I had done Mischief, but mm-hmm. It wasn't out yet or anything. And I was sitting with my manager Barry Josephson, and and then Wolfgang Puck on Spago at the time. I think he still does, but he was very sweet man, and he used to bring me like cool things because I was trying to become a vegetarian.
Yeah,
he would have me try like all these weird things, that he would make himself because he was, he was a very accommodating and a very nice guy. And he kind of pulled me aside and he says, "Listen, man, I've seen a lot of young actors and, or young musicians and whatever. And I don't think it'll change you, but things around you are going to get very weird very quickly soon." Mm-hmm. Because he, I kind of got to meet him and know him by going to frequenting his Spago, right? Mm-hmm. So, I went across the street because I was dating this woman who ended up becoming my first ex-wife. And I was getting her a cassette of one of the bands that she liked over Tower Records, which was right next door. And this was just as I had done an interview with LA Weekly, and I was on the cover, but I had no idea that it was out yet. And I had no idea I was on the cover of this thing. Mm. So I go next door, and Duff McKagen was working at Tower Records. And this was before Duff was even famous. He was working at Tower Records, right?
Right.
So I go in to get this thing, and he goes, "Dude, you're that guy." I said, "What guy?" He goes, "That guy on that billboard." And he takes me outside, and above Spago is his billboard, 40 feet high, and it's on the cover of the LA Weekly. You know?
Wow.
And I'm eating dinner with my manager. I'm meeting him for dinner. All right, so I get the thing, and I thank Duff. Duff says, "Hey, you know, I got this band," and it was a formation of, I think it might even be before Guns N' Roses, but way before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came in, thanks, you know, and I'd seen him all the time because I always frequented Red Tower Records. And so I go in to Spago, and it was totally different. It was like women at other tables were like now looking at me, you know, and I'm like feeling very uncomfortable. You know? And then they would come over and they would give me their numbers. Okay, now multiply that times 10,000 or 100,000. You know, and that's what Charlie went through, and I think that's what, you know, the difficulty of fame. You live in a fishbowl.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I love Charlie. I mean, you know, he's like still one of the nicest guys, you know, and he's a sweet guy. He means well, but he went through some very difficult times. And the Wraith was a lot of fun. I mean, there were so many great people on that. Mike Marvin was directed it, and, you know, Nick Cassavetes, Charlie, obviously,
Sherilyn Fenn,
Steve Sherrill, and
Randy
Jamie
Quaid.
Bosian.
Mm-hmm. Randy Quaid.
It was again, that was a lot of fun too, because we were in Tucson. We were outside of Tucson in this tiny little town, and so we became friends and we hung out. Griffin O'Neill, you know, Ryan O'Neill's kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was an interesting group. You know, again, you know, you're kind of that was another good experience because you're sort of in the middle of nowhere.
How about making Modern Girls?
Modern Girls was good. I mean, you know, I played a real weirdo on that. So,
yeah.
So what I used to do was, there was a place called, I think it was like Oz. I mean, I don't know if you know the store Oz.
Yeah.
Oz has like a lot of weird stuff. And so they would sell like, you know, rubber eggs and rubber chickens and like, you know, just bizarre stuff, you know, creepy, weird, funny things, you know. And so Virginia Madsen was the girl that I have this fixation for.
Mm-hmm.
So I would bring her like weird gifts from that store, you know, just to kind of like, you know, mess with her mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And she didn't know who they were coming from, you know.
Yeah.
And then finally, like, you know, before she started getting creeped out, I wrote Love Ray, you know, which was my character name.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ray is in the movie, if nobody's seen the movie, is the guy that kind of kidnaps her.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So it was, I mean, that was fun too, but that was a very short sort of, I mean, I wasn't on that very long, but it was a fun thing because my neighbor was one of the producers on that show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was part of it was a mid-'80s trend where you would have a person or a couple persons have, like, you know, an all-night, you know, misadventure. Like it started with Martin Scorsese's After Hours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was bizarre.
Yeah, and that was an Atlantic movie.
Yeah, Jerry Kramer was the director, and Anita Rosenberg was one of the writers and producers of that show.
Mm-hmm.
She was my neighbor, and she'd always said, "Hey, why don't you do a movie for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, put me in something. I'll do whatever. Just let me know." And I was actually up for Clifford, the Clayton Ronan part, and the Clifford Bruno X character.
Yeah.
But I didn't get it. He got it, obviously. Yeah. It was fun. I got to play a weirdo, and you know, that's really what I wanted to play, was different characters. I really wanted to push it.
Yeah, Pamela Springsteen had a role in it. She went to high school with my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was was in the older class and stuff, and like she was in my uncle's class, and they always used to like go to my dad because he had access to all the alcohol and marijuana.
There you go.
Yeah. You did a classic episode of Amazing Stories.
Yeah, actually, I did. Oh, I just ran into Max Gale.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Blue Man Down, right?
Blue Man Down, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually ran into him. It was bizarre. He was fun to work with. Mojo, man, they was like, I love that show, Barney Miller.
He was coming off
I got to work with, and Paul Michael Glazier, you know, from
Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, he was the director on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's an interesting character. Really, you know, particular about what he wants as an actor, and you know, I mean, he's a method actor type guy.
Yeah.
So he was fun to work with, and it was great working with Max Gale. You know, because he's you know, he seems like such a carefree type guy, and you know, he's goofy on Mojo. It's on Barney Miller, but you know, on this, he was a totally different guy on this thing, and it was cool. I mean, it was cool to see, you know, how he processed his you know, his acting abilities.
Yeah, he was coming off a DC cab at that time too.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, you know, it was a cool thing. I mean, you know, I was up for a lot of big projects, but I got a lot of little projects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was cool because I always worked. You know, even though they weren't, you know, the greatest roles, they were roles. You know, and I got to meet some really great people. And then I got to work with a lot of people again down the line.
Yeah, I mean, you worked with so many people who, you know, either were huge or went on to become huge, like, you know, in Satisfaction. I mean, did you have a feeling during Satisfaction that Julia Roberts was going to become huge? Absolutely.
She was so much fun to work with. We got along amazingly. You know, she just had it. I mean, you know, you look in somebody's eyes and she just sparkled, man. She was like, you know, when she'd walk by, it'd be like, you know, a comet going by, and you know, the sparkles were, you know, it was like fairy dust or something. It was, you know, she was always happy. She had some energy to her, and she you know, she was bubbly and funny and fun, and you know,
mm-hmm.
and you know, so yeah, I knew it for sure.
And Liam Neeson too. I mean, he went on to become huge.
Yeah, Liam. I liked Liam. I mean, you know, Liam was he's an interesting character. I mean, he's very sort of, I don't know what the word is, but he's heady, you know. I mean, his you know, I mean, he really does think things through, you know, and, you know, it's kind of heavy, and yet he's got that very funny Irish side, you know.
Yeah.
Let's go down and have a drink, you know.
Yeah.
He's always like, hey, Chris, let's go have a drink. Come on, meet me down at the bar, you know.
Yeah.
I'd be like, all right. You know, I would. He was a good dude. I mean, he was a very personable guy, you know, so I think that really helped him too. And he knew what he wanted. I mean, you know, he's very clear, you know, and what his direction was.
Yeah, I guess Justine Bateman, I guess she was trying to break into the movies, you know, after Michael J. Fox had.
Yeah, Justine, I mean, I met Justine on the Family Ties episode that I did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when I went in to do the part, I was called in to do the part. It was, I forget who it was, one of the producers on that show. And I'm going to look it up. But anyway.
Gary David Goldberg?
Yeah, but it, hang on a second. Let me. Well, anyway. But yeah, I mean, when I saw Justine again, it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, I'll do this. I'd love to do this. I think she's, Justine was a blast. I mean, she was fun because I met through doing that, and as a matter of fact, Justine was friends with Moon and Dweezil, Zappa.
Yeah.
And so the Zappas were neighbors of mine. And I didn't know it. So I'd just walk down the street, or they'd walk up to my house after we got to know each other. And that was really cool. You know?
Yeah.
They were very cool. I mean, but that was probably the ultimate cool thing that, because I was a huge fan of Frank Zappa and the Mothers. Yeah. You know? I just thought he was the coolest guy. And to get to sit in the kitchen with Gail and Frank would, smoke cigarettes and drink beer and have breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like something you couldn't make up. But no, it was actually Aaron Spelling was the guy that brought me in on that day. Because I was actually up for Melrose Place. He had wanted me to do a part at some point in something, and he was the one that brought me in on that.
Oh.
Yeah, a nice man. He was such a nice man.
And,
yeah. I thought, wow. First of all, you can't turn Aaron Spelling down.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't want to do it, I would have done it. But he was just such a good guy.
Yeah, he was also a former actor who had some kind of recipe for success as a producer. I mean, just about every show you ever heard of from the 70s and early 80s, I mean, he did that, everyone's heard of.
I was brilliant. And, the other cool thing was Deborah Harry.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I love Deborah Harry.
Blondie's a great band.
Oh, my God. I mean, such a great band. And it was like, I mean, it was even cooler now that you go back and look at Blondie. When they first came out, it's like, it was pretty dressed up. It was pretty candy-like. It was shiny. But if you really knew where they came from, they were a punk band.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. that were sort of dressed up, and they were phenomenal. And she was phenomenal. And when I got to meet her, I was just like, I couldn't even talk,
Yeah.
I'm sitting there with Liam and Debbie Harry, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably, and then Steve Cropper was in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who's like this phenomenal guitar player, and I mean, they had some cool freaking people in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that. I mean, it blew my mind,
Yeah.
And actually, the husband of Sally Field was one of the producers on this thing, and that's where Julia really got her start, because Sally Field fell in love with Julia. I mean, everybody fell in love with Julia in that movie.
Yeah.
She was awesome.
That's amazing.
The greatest thing that ever happened to me, I think, was, it wasn't that I had all these great big parts. I had a lot of little parts that I got to meet all these really cool people. that either I was fans of or that I just got along with swimmingly, you know, that you know, were really sweet people, and I learned a lot from, you know, just by watching them work, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was I was fortunate. I was very fortunate.
Mm-hmm. You sure were. I wanted to ask really quickly, you did 2 episodes of Freddy's Nightmares.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that like?
That was cool. Because I got to meet Brady. You know, I got to meet, I got to meet
Robert Englund.
You know. Oh yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I met Robert last year. Great guy.
Yeah, no, he was cool, and I thought, you know, here's a guy. When we sat, we talked. You know, I mean, I actually got to sit down with him and talk about this, and so Robert Englund, you know, sits down and talks to me, and he's talking about how he's this, you know, Shakespearean actor. You know, he's like studied and this and that and the other thing, and you know, he's under this mask, and I said, well, dude, you know, I mean, I didn't say dude, but I said, you know, you scare the hell out of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you come through that mask, and you've accomplished, you know, everything that you wanted to do, maybe unknowingly. You know, I mean, you were, you know,
yeah,
you created such a character that will live on for many, 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 many years, forever. You know, it was you know. But it was really interesting because it was his, you know, his intensity. I mean, he was intense. Did you find him intense?
I found him, you know, I found him like a little bit ADD because he loves to talk. I mean, we were in this long ass line that was like, you know, 2.5 hours long line of people, and like he talks to everyone for like 10 minutes or so, and it's like, oh my god, I don't know how you have that much energy, and especially with that long line, you know, and everyone in line is happy to wait because they're just in awe of him.
Yeah, well, he's incredible. He's brilliant. I mean, he's got a brilliant mind. You know, he's intense. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
And he's kind. I mean, you know, he is a kind man. I mean, he took the time, and he would say hello to me every morning. I mean, you know, and he was only doing like other shots. You know, he'd introduce the thing, and it was great because, I mean, you know, it was like this little place way out in the middle of nowhere. You know, this little studio, and then, you know, basically the premise of my thing is we have the devil's daughter, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, my wife and I somehow, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, my wife's crazy because, you know, she's saying this daughter's horrible. In the first one, she offs my wife, the daughter, and in the second one, when she gets old enough, she ends up killing me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of cool because I got to play 2 different characters at 2 different times, you know.
Yeah.
In my life, you know, so I got to play a younger me and then an older me, and that was kind of interesting.
One of those.
And of course, I got to meet Robert Englund, which was huge.
And you also got to work with some good actors like Sharon Farrell and Mark Alamo.
I love her. Yeah, she was cool.
And
yeah, she was. That's true. Yeah, I forgot about her. She's awesome.
And Mark Alamo.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good actors.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's funny because they're so. I mean, look at Virginia Madsen, you know, from Modern Girls. I mean, she went on to win an Oscar, you know, at least, right?
Yeah.
She won, yeah. And, you know, and Daphne and Cindy and, you know, Julia Roberts. I mean, all these people are like, you know, gone on to, and when I did Silent Witness, Melissa Leo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I worked in Valley Bird. Now I got to hang out with Van Halen the whole time I was there. And I thought the director asked me not to hang out with Eddie because I looked like crap every morning when I came in.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hung out and played guitar. I mean, that's what we did. I mean, he would come over to play my guitar, and we'd stay up till 4 or 5 in the morning and play guitar,
Mm-hmm.
But Melissa Leo, right? Melissa Leo played the woman that was raped in the movie by me and 2 other guys, right? Billy Elmer and I can't remember the other guy's name, but phenomenal actors, local actors from Pittsburgh,
Right.
and the one that played my wife was amazing too. She was a local actress, but Melissa Leo was incredible. I mean, and she went on to do like incredible things. She just phenomenal. Of course, Valerie Bernelli, who was the producer on the show and was it went on to do amazing movies and cool things as well. I mean, she's such a force.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these things were I mean, here I was, I'm a musician, wasn't really an actor, a studied actor, except for going to Mickey's classes. And then I worked with Kenny McMillan, who was in Public Greenwich Village, who Mickey introduced me to because I was looking for an acting teacher at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenny was the locksmith. It was him, Julia's brother, and Mickey. And so Kenny McMillan took me under his wing. And I mean, I learned from some really great actors, but I was a musician. And I got to meet, these incredible actors who that was their craft, that was their art. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow, that's just amazing. I mean, that's just beyond amazing with all those people you've gotten to meet and work with and stuff. So these days, do you do just mostly music?
Yeah, I'm in a band called Mercy Jones, the Mercy Jones out in Los Angeles. And we're coming out with we've been together about a year, and we're working with a guy, Greg Smith, who is Nile Rodgers' right-hand guy. He's also written songs for Diana Ross. He's producing us now.
Mm-hmm.
And amazing producer. And we got like a funky blues rock band that has a lot of harmonies, and we got a lot of great songs. And hopefully we'll be coming out with them mid-April. We got a video coming out as well.
Nice.
And, the main focus of the band, again, is bringing together, musicians. We have a lot of musician friends, and we try to support each other. And, we do a lot of projects for homeless. We got homeless crisis out here in Los Angeles.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, I mean, we got kids on the street out here. We got some 60,000 plus supposedly people on the street. I think it's more like 100,000.
We have that. We have that.
Yeah.
Well, we have that in San Francisco, big time too.
Yeah, you guys are in deep doo-doo, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, in more ways than one.
Exactly. It's kind of my pun, my horrible pun. But we do a lot of stuff. We do stuff for Miriam's House, which is a battered women's shelter, and it's for children. And we try to do projects like the Invisible Children of L.A. And, one of the women in our band, Carol McCarthy, does the L.A. Mission. She supports that. So we try to do a lot of good stuff through our music, and as we release more and more stuff, we're going to play some festivals, but our main focus is also to give back. I mean, you know, as an actor, I really wasn't able to give back too much. I mean, yeah, I'd feed the homeless Thanksgiving every once in a while, or, you know, do little things, but I'd like to do it on a bigger scale.
Right.
You know, do shows. And my main thing is, I lived on the streets for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sucked. I mean, it was not fun. But I was by myself, and all I had to really support was myself. And I had a guitar, and I would go in the Westwood, or I'd play on the beach, and people would throw money at me. And, you know, I mean, ultimately, that was how I was discovered.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're a mother with 2 or 3 kids, and you're living on the street, you know, there's not a lot of upside to that.
I know, it's just sad.
Yeah, so I mean, so that's, you know, that's been our focus as a band, you know. But, you know, I mean, the music obviously is the focus, and we have a lot of fun, danceable, great songs, and they're funky and bluesy, and a lot of fun. But, you know, down the line, that's eventually what I want to do is, you know, help the world be a better place, you know.
Yeah. I commend you on that. That's very beautiful.
Well, I'll probably be calling you and having you come out to some shows.
Well, you know, I'm going to be in town for a week in mid-April. Do you know if you have any shows in mid-April?
We might. Yeah, man. Just come. Yeah, well, you have my number now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can call me at any time. And yeah, let me know when you're coming by. I mean, or down in town. And we'll hang out.
Absolutely. That would be great. That would be great.
Be awesome, yeah.
Well, Chris, this has been such an honor, and you've had just an amazing life and career, and you will continue to do so. I thank you so much for your time today.
And I appreciate it. I'm honored to be on your show.
Oh, thank you.
And call me, and seriously, when you get to town, you know, if we don't have something going, we'll put something together.
Okay, great.
All right?
All right.
Bye, Tommy.
All right, Chris, you have yourself a great day.
I will. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Chris Nash. Ain't he a cool dude? Like I said, Chris Nash, you've had an amazing career, an amazing life, and I'm glad that you're trying to help the homeless with your music and your band and all that. And I hope we get together when I'm in LA in a few weeks. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes!